feel it, don't you? That quiet tightening in your chest when someone more confident enters the room, that subtle comparison that begins without your permission, the voice that whispers you are behind, you are not enough, you will be exposed. It does not shout, it does not need to. It has lived with you for years. It speaks in your own tone, wears your own face, and disguises itself as realism. You have mistaken it for truth. But what if I told you that this insecurity, this persistent doubt is not a personality trait, not a permanent wound, not even a flaw? What if it is simply a misunderstanding of reality? And what if, by facing 9 harsh but liberating truths, you could remove it not by force, not by denial, but by understanding? Sit with me. I will not comfort you with illusions. I will not tell you that you are perfect as you are. I will not promise that others will validate you. Instead, I will offer you something far more stable: clarity. The first truth is this: no one is thinking about you as much as you imagine. This may sting. You have built entire inner dramas around how others perceive you. You replay conversations, rehearse future encounters, anticipate judgment. You imagine invisible juries evaluating your every move. Yet observe carefully. The people you fear are thinking about themselves. Their worries mirror yours. Their minds revolve around their own insecurities, ambitions, disappointments. You are not the center of their scrutiny. You are a passing character in their private theater. When this truth settles into you, something shifts. The spotlight you imagined above your head fades. The performance ends. You are no longer on trial. Insecurity feeds on imagined audiences. Remove the audience, and it weakens. The second truth is harder. You are not special in your suffering. You have felt isolated in your doubt, as if your flaws are uniquely embarrassing. But walk through the world with open eyes. The successful tremble before important decisions. The admired question their worth in silence. The composed fight private battles. Your insecurity is not evidence that you are defective. It is evidence that you are human. But here is where most people misunderstand. They use this realization to excuse weakness. Everyone struggles, they say, and then they remain stagnant. The Stoic does not do this. He says, if this burden is common, then it is conquerable. The universality of insecurity does not justify it. It normalizes the battlefield. And on a normalized battlefield, discipline becomes possible. The third truth will challenge your pride. Your insecurity is often a form of ego. You think insecurity means you lack confidence, but examine it closely. When you obsess over how you appear, how you rank, how you compare, what are you truly focused on? Yourself, your image, your evaluation, your status. This is ego turned inward. The ego does not only manifest as arrogance, it also manifests as self-absorption in failure. It says, how dare I not be admired? It says, how dare I be average? And yet the world owes you nothing. Once you accept this, the burden lightens. You no longer demand exceptional treatment from reality. You no longer measure your worth by imagined hierarchies. You begin to ask a different question. Not how am I perceived, but am I acting with integrity? That shift alone can silence years of insecurity. The fourth truth will feel severe. No one is coming to save you from your self-doubt. Not praise, not success, not relationships, not followers, not applause. You may believe that once you achieve a certain milestone, the insecurity will dissolve. But if you have achieved anything before, you already know the pattern. The momentary relief fades, a new standard appears, a new comparison begins. External victories do not cure internal confusion. Only philosophy does. Only the disciplined training of perception does. You must decide what is within your control and what is not. You must anchor your identity in character, not outcome. You must treat your thoughts as impressions, not commands. This is not glamorous work. It is quiet, repetitive, invisible, and that is why few commit to it. The fifth truth begins to sharpen the blade. You are responsible for the standards that make you feel small. Look closely at the metrics you use against yourself. Who defined them? Why must you earn admiration from people you do not admire? Why must your timeline mirror someone else's? Insecurity thrives when you inherit values without examination. The Stoic examines everything. If wealth defines you, ask why. If appearance defines you, ask why. If popularity defines you, ask why. Often you will find that these standards were absorbed unconsciously from culture, from peers, from fear. And what is absorbed unconsciously can be removed consciously. At this stage, you may feel resistance. A part of you may cling to your insecurity because it feels familiar. It gives you an identity. It excuses hesitation. It protects you from risk. Yes, insecurity can be comfortable. If you believe you are inadequate, you never have to test yourself fully. Failure becomes expected. You are never surprised. But what if that comfort is the true prison? You see, insecurity is not humility. It is avoidance disguised as modesty. True humility says, I may fail, but I will act anyway. Insecurity says, I will shrink so I do not risk failing. The difference is subtle yet decisive. And now we approach a deeper layer. The sixth truth. Your mind exaggerates threats to protect you, not to guide you. That voice predicting embarrassment, rejection, humiliation, it believes it is safeguarding you. It evolved to keep you within the tribe, to avoid social danger. But your environment has changed. The ancient alarm remains. You must become the observer of this mechanism. When insecurity arises, do not fight it violently. Examine it. Ask, is this thought useful? Is it aligned with my values? Or is it merely an outdated reflex? Most of the time you will find it is the latter. And in that recognition, distance forms between you and the thought. That distance is freedom. We are not yet finished. We have only begun dismantling the illusion. Stay with me, because the next truths will demand even more courage. When you begin to create distance between yourself and your thoughts, something unsettling happens. You realize that much of your life has been governed by unexamined narratives, stories you accepted as facts, labels you adopted without question. Seventh truth waits here. You are not your past mistakes. This sounds simple, but you have built an identity around moments that no longer exist. A failed attempt, an awkward interaction, a decision you regret. You replay them as evidence in an internal courtroom, convicting yourself repeatedly. But understand this clearly. The past is not an active force. It has no hands. It cannot reach forward. It exists only as memory, and memory is interpretation. The Stoic does not deny the past. He studies it. He extracts instruction from it, and then he releases it. When you cling to past failures as proof of inadequacy, you are misusing them. Mistakes are data, not destiny. If you allow them to define you, you turn temporary ignorance into permanent identity. Consider this carefully. The person who made that mistake was operating with less knowledge, less awareness, less discipline than you possess now. Why must your current self be sentenced for the limitations of your former self? Growth demands forgiveness, not the soft kind that excuses irresponsibility, but the rational kind that recognizes evolution. You cannot erase your past, but you can refuse to carry it as a weapon against yourself. And now the eighth truth emerges. Comparison is a distortion of perspective. You compare your beginning to someone else's middle, your private doubts to someone else's public confidence, your internal struggles to their external presentation. You are measuring different dimensions. This guarantees insecurity. The Stoics understood that every human life unfolds under unique conditions, different temperaments, different environments, different obstacles. To compare two lives without accounting for context is intellectually dishonest. But the deeper issue is this: comparison shifts your focus outward. It places your attention on variables you cannot control. You cannot control another person's talent, timing, opportunity, or recognition. But you can control your effort, your discipline, your honesty. When you redirect your focus inward to what you can influence, you reclaim energy that was previously wasted. This redirection is not passive. It requires vigilance. Your mind will attempt to drift back into comparison. It is drawn to it like water to a slope. Your task is to gently but firmly return it to its proper ground. Ask yourself daily, am I improving relative to who I was yesterday? That is the only comparison that builds strength. Now we approach the ninth truth, the harshest of all. You will never eliminate uncertainty. Insecurity often arises from the desire for guarantees. You want assurance that you will succeed before you attempt. You want certainty that you will be respected before you speak. You want proof that you are worthy before you act. But life does not operate on guarantees. If you wait for complete certainty, you will wait forever. The Stoic path is not about removing uncertainty. It is about acting despite it. Courage is not the absence of doubt. It is disciplined movement through doubt. Let this settle in you. Insecurity does not disappear before action. It weakens because of action. When you consistently do what you fear to speak when you would remain silent, attempt when you would hesitate, commit when you would withdraw, you gather evidence. Evidence that you can endure discomfort. Evidence that rejection does not destroy you. Evidence that imperfection does not define you. Over time, this evidence reshapes your internal narrative. You begin to trust yourself not because you are flawless, but because you have proven resilient. And resilience is the true antidote to insecurity. Yet even with these 9 truths, something remains. Knowledge alone does not transform. It must be integrated. You may understand these ideas intellectually and still feel the old patterns return. That is normal. Philosophy is not a single revelation. It is daily training. Think of the mind as a garden. Insecurity is a weed that grows naturally. You cannot prevent its seeds from existing, but you can prevent them from taking over. You do this through repetition, through reflection, through disciplined action, through honest self-examination. Each day you must ask, what did I control? Where did I react unconsciously? Where did I act in alignment with my values? Do not judge yourself harshly in this process. Judgment feeds the very insecurity you are attempting to dissolve. Observe instead, correct gently, persist consistently. This is the quiet work that builds inner solidity. At first, no one will notice. You will still feel moments of doubt. You will still experience flashes of comparison. But something subtle will be different. You will not believe them so easily. And that is the beginning of mastery. We are not yet at transformation, but the foundation has been laid. Now we must go deeper beyond eliminating insecurity, into building an identity so grounded that insecurity has nowhere to attach itself. Stay with me. The journey is about to intensify. Once you begin to loosen insecurity's grip, you may feel a strange emptiness. The old narrative that defined you, the quiet self-criticism, the constant measuring, starts to fade, and in its place there is silence. Many people retreat at this stage. They return to insecurity because it feels familiar. It gives them something to fixate on. Without it, they must confront a deeper question. Who am I if I am you, not constantly evaluating myself? This is where the work becomes serious. You must construct your identity deliberately, not around success, not around approval, not around image, but around character. Character is the only possession that cannot be taken from you. It does not depend on circumstances. It is built through choice. Ask yourself, when no one is watching, how do I act? When there is no applause, do I still pursue excellence? When it would be easier to blame, do I accept responsibility? Insecurity weakens when your focus shifts from how you are perceived to how you behave. You cannot control perception, but you can control conduct. And over time, conduct shapes reputation more reliably than performance ever could. There is a quiet confidence that emerges from this alignment. It is not loud. It does not demand recognition. It does not compare. It simply stands. But to build this foundation, you must confront discomfort voluntarily. You must train yourself to do difficult things not for praise, but for discipline. Wake early when you would sleep. Practice when you would procrastinate. Speak truth when silence would protect your image. Admit ignorance when ego would pretend knowledge. Each of these actions strengthens an internal spine. Insecurity thrives in weakness of will. It shrinks before discipline. Consider this carefully. When you know you are doing what you can, sincerely and consistently, criticism loses its sting. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer defines you. If someone questions your ability, you respond with effort. If someone doubts you, you refine your skill. If someone misunderstands you, you clarify calmly. You do not collapse because your identity is not resting on their opinion. This is self-mastery. And yet self-mastery is not rigidity. It is flexibility rooted in principle. You will still fail. You will still encounter days when doubt whispers loudly. But now you possess tools. When insecurity says, you are not good enough, you respond, good enough for what? My task is to improve, not to impress. When it says they are ahead of you, you respond, their path is not mine. When it says you might fail, you respond, failure is instruction. This internal dialogue is not fantasy, it is trained reasoning. Over time, your emotional reactions begin to follow your reasoning rather than override it. But there is a deeper layer still. Insecurity often masks fear of rejection. You fear being excluded, dismissed, overlooked. This fear is ancient. It once protected survival, but now it often imprisons expression. You silence yourself to avoid disapproval. You limit ambition to avoid envy. You shrink personality to avoid standing out. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your life has been negotiated with fear? To delete insecurity, you must become willing to be misunderstood. This does not mean becoming careless or arrogant. It means accepting that alignment with your values will not always align with you others' expectations. The Stoic understands that reputation is external. It fluctuates beyond control. To chase universal approval is to chase wind. Instead, aim for internal consistency. When you act according to reason and integrity, you may still face criticism, but it will not destabilize you.
Why?
Because you know why you acted. Clarity of intention is armor. And now something begins to shift more profoundly. As you detach from insecurity, your attention becomes available for focus, available for creation, available for contribution. You realize how much energy was consumed by self-evaluation. Imagine reclaiming that energy. Imagine directing it toward skill, toward relationships, toward meaningful work. Insecurity narrows your world to the self. Confidence expands it outward. The more you serve something larger than your image or craft, your family, your principles, the smaller your insecurity becomes. It has less space to occupy. But remember, this is not a single decision. It is a daily one. You will wake some mornings feeling strong, others uncertain. On uncertain days, return to basics. Control what you can, act with integrity, release what you cannot influence. Repeat. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, you will notice a difference in how you carry yourself. Not arrogance, not performance. Stability. And stability is far more powerful than confidence that depends on circumstance. We are approaching the final stage of this journey. Now that insecurity has been exposed, challenged, and weakened, we must ensure it does not rebuild itself in subtle ways. The final transformation awaits. At this stage, insecurity no longer dominates you, but it still attempts to whisper. It changes its form. It becomes more subtle, more refined. Instead of shouting, "You are not enough," it murmurs, "Are you sure you should take that risk?" Instead of declaring you are inferior, it suggests perhaps you should wait until you are perfect. Perfectionism is insecurity wearing formal clothing. It appears disciplined, responsible, even ambitious. But beneath it lies the same fear of judgment. You delay action because you want certainty. You delay expression because you want flawless execution. You delay commitment because you want guaranteed success. But nothing meaningful is born perfect. If you demand perfection before movement, you will remain stationary. The Stoic understands that progress is iterative. Improvement is gradual. Mastery is earned through visible imperfection. Release the fantasy of flawless beginnings. Accept that awkwardness is part of growth. Accept that discomfort is evidence of expansion. Accept that mistakes are tuition fees for wisdom. This acceptance dissolves a large portion of lingering insecurity, because insecurity often demands ideal conditions, and ideal conditions rarely exist. Now consider something deeper. Insecurity is rooted in attachment. Attachment to outcomes, attachment to image, attachment to control. When you are overly attached, you become fragile. Your mood depends on results. Your self-worth fluctuates with feedback. But when you loosen attachment and anchor yourself in effort, you become resilient. You begin to see life as training. Every conversation trains communication. Every setback trains patience. Every criticism trains composure. With this mindset, nothing is wasted. Even failure becomes utility. And when failure is useful, it is no longer terrifying. You start to move with a quiet boldness. Not reckless, not careless, but grounded. At this point, you may notice something surprising. As insecurity decreases, compassion increases. When you are no longer preoccupied with defending your own image, you have space to understand others. You recognize their insecurity. You see their hidden fears. You respond with steadiness rather than competition. This is strength. True confidence does not need to diminish others. It stands calmly and allows others to stand as well. And here lies another crucial shift. You stop seeking validation. This does not mean you reject praise harshly. It means you do not depend on it. Praise becomes pleasant, not necessary. Criticism becomes informative, not destructive. Your emotional state stabilizes. You become less reactive. When someone succeeds, you feel inspired rather than threatened. When someone disagrees, you feel curious rather than defensive. This is evidence of internal security. But let us not romanticize it. This transformation is a transformation. Requires repetition under pressure. It is easy to feel composed in isolation. The real test arrives in interaction. In meetings, in social settings, in moments of evaluation. There, insecurity will attempt a final surge. Your task is not to eliminate sensation. Your task is to regulate response. Feel the tightness. Acknowledge the thought. Proceed according to principle anyway. Every time you do this, you strengthen neural pathways of resilience. Over months and years, this becomes your default state. You no longer ask, "Do they approve?" You ask, "Did I act well?" This single question simplifies life, and in simplicity there is peace. We now approach the final integration, the The last phase is not about defeating insecurity. It is about transcending it entirely. There comes a moment quiet, almost unremarkable, when you realize something has changed. You enter a room that once intimidated you, and your breathing remains steady. You speak your thoughts without rehearsing them endlessly. You attempt something new without demanding guarantees. The insecurity has not vanished completely, but it no longer commands you. It has been reduced to background noise, and in its place stands something far more solid: self-trust. Self-trust is not arrogance. It is not the belief that you will always succeed. It is the belief that regardless of outcome, you will remain aligned with your values. This is the ultimate deletion of insecurity, because insecurity depends on the fear that you cannot handle what happens next. When you know you can handle discomfort, rejection, imperfection, its power dissolves. Reflect on the journey. You learned that no one watches you as closely as you imagined. You understood that your suffering is human, not unique. You saw how ego hides within insecurity. You accepted responsibility for your standards. You detached from comparison. You released the grip of the past. You embraced uncertainty. You constructed identity around character. You trained discipline over emotion. You loosened attachment to outcomes. Each truth was harsh, but each truth was freeing. Now your task is simple, though not easy. Live them. Not once, not when convenient, but daily. Wake and remind yourself, I control my effort, my perception, my character. When insecurity whispers, do not argue loudly. Smile slightly. Return to action. This is maturity, and understand something profound. The goal was never to become fearless. The goal was to become governed by reason rather than fear. As you continue this path, you will notice that opportunities expand, not because the world changed, but because you did. You volunteer for responsibility. You speak when it matters. You attempt ambitious tasks, and even when outcomes are uncertain, you feel steady. This steadiness is rare. It is built in silence, in reflection, in disciplined repetition. It is built by Stoicism. If this journey resonated with you, if you felt pieces of your own mind exposed and strengthened, then continue walking this path with us. Built by Stoicism is not merely a channel. It is a training ground for the mind, a place where we sharpen perception, cultivate discipline, and build character that does not crumble under pressure. Subscribe not for entertainment, but for alignment. Return not for comfort, but for clarity. Engage not for validation, but for growth. And as you leave this moment, carry one quiet commitment with you. Act with integrity today, regardless of who is watching. In that single act, insecurity loses its home, and you become unshakable.